My name is Molly, and I'm 32 years old. I'm married to Justin, who is 35 and works in an office. I work as a freelance fashion designer from home. My career started with many small, exciting projects, but it wasn't until I landed a significant project with a substantial paycheck that things really changed. This opportunity allowed Justin and me to move into a luxurious high-rise apartment, something I had always wanted. Since I was the one who had dreamed of living in such a place, I agreed to cover the monthly rent myself. Justin was thrilled about the new apartment, and I thought our future together looked bright. I couldn't have anticipated what was about to happen next. One day, Justin brought his 65-year-old mother, Betty, to our place. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago, and she had been living alone since then. "Hi, Molly," Betty greeted me. "Hi, Betty, it's been a while. What's going on?" "Well," Justin began awkwardly, "she wants to move in with us." "Why?" I asked, surprised. Justin explained that Betty's house was deteriorating, and she wanted to move to a better place. She didn't have much money, so she hoped to stay with us temporarily. I understood the situation but wasn't thrilled about it. Our apartment was a haven for just the two of us, and Betty, whom I barely knew, felt like a stranger. I was reluctant to have her join us. "Please," Justin said, taking my hands. "Her house is falling apart. I promise I'll urge her to find a smaller, newer place as soon as possible." Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it would only be for a short while. A month later, Betty moved in. "Thank you so much for letting me stay in this wonderful apartment," she said. "No problem," I replied with a forced smile. "Please make yourself at home." But soon after settling in, Betty approached me with an unexpected request. "Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money?" I was taken aback. As soon as she had unpacked her things, she was asking me for money. I was taken aback by Betty's directness. "I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been costing me money. I just need a little bit, please." "How much are you asking for?" I inquired. "Around $300 for now," she said. Given her age, it wasn't surprising that she might be facing health issues, and I could understand that medical expenses could add up quickly. I reached into my purse, found $650, and handed it to her. Then, one day, Justin came to me with a request. I was unsettled, fearing it might be related to Betty. "You know, we should get a new car," he said. I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of my chair. "What do you mean? We just bought a car 2 years ago." "Well, it's too small," Justin explained. I couldn't understand why the size of the car mattered. It was sufficient for the two of us, or 3 if you counted Betty. Why did the size need to change? "My mom doesn't like it," Justin added. I was baffled. Why was Betty complaining about a car that wasn't hers? "She wants a more luxurious car, like a Mercedes," Justin said. I was completely lost. Changing cars for such a trivial reason seemed unreasonable. Besides, could Betty even drive? "I'm not buying an expensive car. Tell her it's not happening," I said firmly. At the time, it was clear to me that this request made no sense. Betty's complaints about the car seemed to never end, and soon she came to me again, asking for money. "My medical bills have become more expensive, and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again?" she pleaded. "Should I be concerned about your health?" I asked, worried. Betty hesitated before responding. "Not really. I'm just feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite costly. I'm really sorry for asking." "I understand. How much do you need this time?" I asked. "About $1,000, she said. $1,000. I was taken aback. The amount seemed excessive for therapy, though I wasn't well versed in the costs. "I'm sorry," I said, "but my insurance only covers a limited number of sessions fully, and after that, I have to pay half of the charges." "I see," Betty replied. "I'll get it by tomorrow." Despite my shock at the amount, I tried to rationalize it, thinking perhaps there were high costs associated with the therapy. Even after that, Betty continued to find reasons to borrow more money, citing medical bills and transportation costs for visiting sick friends. By the time I realized, the total amount she had borrowed had reached $5,000. Although my job was going well, I was becoming increasingly frustrated. That's when I noticed something strange. One day, I couldn't help but peek into Betty's room. To my shock, I found designer bags and wallets neatly displayed on a shelf. I was stunned. How could she afford such luxurious items when she claimed to be struggling financially? She had borrowed so much money from me. Yet her room was filled with expensive goods. I grew increasingly suspicious of the medical bills she'd been asking for. A month later, Betty approached me again, asking for more money with no hint of remorse. "Can you please wait?" she said casually. I decided it was time to confront her. I called Justin, who seemed unaware of the situation. "I need to ask you about Betty," I said. "What exactly is she using the money for?" "What's going on, Molly?" Justin asked, clearly confused. Betty mumbled something about therapy sessions and prescriptions, but I pressed further. "And what about the designer clothes, bags, and other items? Are you really seeing a therapist?" "Of course," Betty replied, but her hesitation was clear. "If that's the case, show me the receipts. You must have them, right?" I demanded. Cornered by my questioning, Betty was at a loss for words. It became evident that she wasn't using the money for her well-being but for something else entirely. Justin, still puzzled, asked, "Wait, what are you guys talking about?" "Betty has been spending the money she borrowed from me, more than $5,000, on luxury items," I explained. "Even so, you're being too aggressive. Can you talk to her more gently?" Justin said, his loyalty clearly lying with his mother. In other words, he was a mama's boy. "I don't have receipts," Betty admitted. "I have been shopping and dining out with friends." I was taken aback. "You seem so relaxed despite claiming to be broke. You didn't seem depressed at all. If you've been lying, you need to pay me back immediately." Betty's eyes were full of desperation. "I can't come up with that amount right away." Frustrated, I pointed to the designer items in her room. "Sell all of those things. If you can't, then move out." Justin, ever the defender, intervened. "Hey, you're being unfair. She deserves a little luxury too." "I wouldn't call it luxury," I shot back. "More than $5,000 has been squandered. This feels like a scam." Justin countered, "You're being disrespectful. Just because you're paying the rent doesn't give you the right to be so arrogant." "If you're unhappy, then you can leave," he said. "What?" I was incredulous. I was reaching my boiling point. Steam seemed about to burst from my ears as I glared at him. "Did I say anything wrong? You're the one who brought Betty here in the first place. You do nothing but lounge around at home. Thanks to you, I'm stuck living with this mess. You're so condescending, it's infuriating." "Get out now," I snapped. Rage consumed me. "Fine. Don't regret this," Justin said, grabbing only the essentials and leaving the apartment. I found a new place quickly. As a remote worker, I could do my job from anywhere. I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. So now, what was next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been covering the rent on my own, and I assumed Justin had no interest in taking over. Even if he wanted to, his paycheck wouldn't be enough to cover it. My income far exceeded his. I consulted with a realtor who had assisted me before. I explained that, due to personal reasons, it had become very difficult to manage the monthly rent. Although I could technically afford it, I chose to downplay my situation. "I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do?" the realtor asked. I asked for his help with the situation. One day, while I was working, I received a call from Justin. "What's going on?" I answered, puzzled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Justin demanded. "I was told to move out because the lease was canceled." "Yes, I asked the property agent to break the lease," I explained. "Since I don't live there anymore, I don't see why I should continue paying the rent." "But my mom and I still live there," Justin protested. I was stunned. "What? That's absurd. I don't live there, so why should I keep covering the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise the money," I suggested. I was incredulous and frustrated. It seemed Justin's sense of entitlement had no bounds. I spoke with a hint of sarcasm. "Well, you were the one who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you're not ready to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself?" "Oh wait, you probably can't afford it with your salary." Justin seemed at a loss for words. "You know, you should be able to manage a modest apartment. So go ahead and deal with it. Move in with your mom." "Are you kidding me?" I retorted. "My mom has already used up her savings from selling her house. I don't have any extra funds myself. How do you expect me to find a new place?" "That's not my problem," he replied. I couldn't understand how he still had no savings when he had been relying on my income. The entitlement and irresponsibility of both him and his mother were astounding. "You've brought this upon yourselves with your foolishness," I said. "From now on, figure it out on your own." "Are you saying we should be homeless? You're still my wife," Justin pleaded. "I've told you, figure it out elsewhere. I'm done with this. Goodbye." I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. "Mally, I'm really sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I will pay you back, so please don't kick us out." Her tearful plea surprised and saddened me. I didn't want to lecture her, but I felt I needed to explain. You should live within your means. If you only have a small retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it. I knew the harsh reality as a freelancer. If I wanted a certain quality of life, I had to work hard and earn it rather than relying on others. "I understand," Betty said. "I'm sorry. Please don't let us end up on the street." "I'm sorry," I replied, my voice softening. "But you need to manage your finances better. The apartment had already been leased to someone else. You really need to move out," I told Betty coldly. "This is a matter of regulation." I ended the call with finality. Later, the realtor informed me that Justin and Betty had pleaded with him to keep the lease, but he told them that a new tenant was moving in soon and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary would have been swallowed up by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd for them to expect me to continue supporting their living situation while Justin relied on me. His outbursts had pushed things past the point of no return. I was frustrated and resolved that this was the end. Justin and Betty were left without an apartment and were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Betty had worked only briefly, so her Social Security payments were minimal, and they were struggling even to eat. I felt they had brought this upon themselves. On my end, I secured another major project and became more financially stable. Looking back on our marriage, I realized that depending solely on a partner, financially or otherwise, is unsustainable. It leads to significant pain when things fall apart. Justin and I separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings had cooled, and there was no reason to stay together. Now that we're estranged, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I'd be more discerning. The divorce taught me valuable lessons about life and relationships, and I plan to take my time finding the right partner.